One of the most overlooked breakdowns in community association management happens after a decision is already made. Boards often assume that once something is approved, whether it's maintenance work, vendor selection, or policy enforcement, execution will naturally follow. But in practice, that's where many communities begin to experience inconsistency, not because of lack of intent, but because of lack of structure around follow-through. So what's actually happening? In many communities, operational execution is handled through a combination of emails, vendor coordination, management notes, and informal tracking. So when a decision is made at the board level, what happens next often depends on who remembered the action item, how it was documented, whether it was clearly assigned, and whether there's a consistent follow-up system in place. In other words, execution becomes dependent on memory and informal communication rather than structured operational systems. That is where the breakdown begins, because even good management teams can lose consistency when there is no defined execution framework. How does that impact the board? So from a board perspective, this typically shows up as, "We approved this weeks ago, why hasn't it happened yet?" Repeated follow-ups for the same item, unclear status updates, confusion about responsibility between vendors and management, and a general feeling that things are not moving forward consistently. Over time, this creates frustration that is often misdiagnosed as slow management or vendor issues, when the root cause is actually a lack of execution structure. So let's define root cause. The root issue is not effort. It's operational design. Most community operations lacked a defined execution tracking system, clear ownership of post-decision tasks, consistent reporting cadence back to the board, and structured accountability loops. Without these elements, execution becomes reactive instead of systematic. And when execution is reactive, even simple items can stall or require repeated follow-up. So what does good look like? In well-structured community operations, every board decision enters a defined execution path. That includes clear assignment of responsibility, documented timelines, visible tracking of open items, and consistent reporting back to the board on status and completion. The key difference is not speed, it's visibility and accountability. Boards should not have to wonder where things stand. They should be able to see it clearly at any point in time. So in closing, community management is often viewed as a service function, maintenance coordination, vendor oversight, and administrative support. But in practice, the communities that operate most effectively treat it as an execution system, where structure, accountability, and follow-through are not optional. They are built into the way decisions are carried out. That is where consistency comes from, and that is where operational stability actually begins.